So I've been a travel physical therapist for about 3 years now, bouncing from city to city, treating all types of different patients, and enjoying my time off between my contracts. It really is a pretty good life. But there are certain things that you're just not going to know or learn about until you're actually doing the job. So in this video, I want to talk about 5 unexpected challenges that I've faced as a travel physical therapist. In this video, I want to talk about some of the logistical nightmares, some of the logistical problems that you might come across, while also talking about the emotional toll that the job can take on you sometimes. But stick around, because I'm also going to talk about the things that I personally do to get through all these problems. And number 5 is the one that still kind of gets to me sometimes, even 3 years later. Challenge number 1, the learning curve of walking into a new clinic every 3 months. Now, obviously one of the perks of travel therapy is traveling to these new cities and being able to live in these different places. But you have to remember that you're mainly there to work. And being able to walk into the clinic and be of help as soon as possible is pretty important to having a good clinic experience. Obviously, you have to get to know your patients, their names, what they're there for, their goals, their comorbidities, all of that to ensure that they have a good experience in the clinic. But you also have to get to know the clinic itself, your co-workers, where they keep things, the documentation, the EMR system, so you know how to do your paperwork in an efficient manner, the doctors that are your normal referral source. Now, in my experience, depending on where you're working at, there may be some sort of ramp-up period where they start you off kind of low with only a few patients, and that kind of builds into you having your own caseload. Some places do that really well, some places don't. But either way, again, you're going to be expected to jump in, adapt, and help with a full caseload relatively soon. And to be able to succeed, you're going to have to go from being the new clinician walking into the clinic on that first day to the confident and the competent therapist that you know you can be. And again, I've been doing this for about 3 years, and I still get a little nervous every day I walk into a new clinic, a new facility on that very first day. But eventually I remember that the job is pretty much the same no matter where I'm at. Listen to your patients, help them get back to doing what they want to do. Now, when it comes to the first few weeks of me starting a new job, I like to get to the clinic early, even earlier than when my shift starts, because that allows me a lot more time to just take my time and chart review and making sure that I really know what I'm walking into when I meet these new patients. This allows me to build a really good therapist-patient rapport, a good relationship with them, especially since I'm new in the clinic, but I also make sure that their sessions are always efficient and to make sure that I'm not wasting their time or my own time. Again, the first few weeks, maybe the first week especially, is the most difficult, but after that, it's usually a pretty smooth ride. Challenge number 2, housing can be a bit of a roulette. Now, housing stipends are usually a part of my pay packages, which means that I'm responsible for finding my own places to stay when I'm out in these different cities on these jobs. And I take my housing searches pretty seriously, because after a long day of work, I want to come home to a place that's quiet, cozy, and safe. A little bit of a story time. So a couple of years ago, I was working in this clinic, and the place that I was renting was pretty good. It was honestly kind of perfect, I thought, for where I was working at the time. It was spacious, it was cozy, it was super close to all the grocery stores and the things that I like to do, and it made the commute to the clinic that I was working in at the time very short. Come to find out, I would be, having conversations with my patients in the clinic, and they would, inquire, and they would ask, where are you staying at during your time here? And I'd tell them the area that I was staying in, and they would say, oh, are you okay? Are you safe? And me being none the wiser, I'm like, yeah, I feel great. I think I'm in a good place. And after getting that reaction a couple of times, I would look up the crime statistics of that area, and it turns out, it wasn't the safest. And again, nothing happened to me personally. I didn't have a bad experience, me nor my property, and I never felt like I was in danger. But again, if I did a little bit more due diligence, I may or may not have still ended up in that same place. And now, like I said, I am a little bit more diligent when it comes to looking into the places that I'm planning on renting. Once I kind of find out the area that I'm going to be working in and the area that I feel like I'm going to be renting in, I do look up things like the crime statistics, but I also spend more time just asking the landlords questions. I ask for, descriptions of the properties, descriptions of the surrounding areas, maybe some extra pictures or videos if they so feel like they can send them to me. And again, for most of the landlords that I talk to, it's usually never a problem, because that helps build a good rapport, a good relationship between me and the person whose property I'm going to be renting at that time. Also, if you want to know about how I typically do my housing searches, or the best ways that I feel like there are to search for housing for travel, healthcare, travel therapy contracts, I made a video on it. I'll put it somewhere in this video, but I'll also put it in the comment box down below. Challenge number 3, no PTO, no sick days. As a contract employee, my pay is only based off of when I'm actually in that clinic, in that facility, working. So that means, for whatever reason, if I'm not in that clinic on that day, I just don't get paid. If I get sick and I have to call out for whatever reason, then I don't get paid, and then I'm losing out on at least a few $100s of income. If I have to take a bit of time off to go to an event like a wedding or a vacation that just so happened to fall in between those work dates, I lose out on that income, and you're gonna have to kind of multiply that money, that income that I've lost at that point. Depending on how important that level of missed income is to you, it might force you to do things like working if you're not feeling the best, or skipping out on potential important family or recreational events like vacations, like a friend's wedding. Now, personally, I don't ever think that you should do things like working through sickness if you're not feeling well, or missing important family, friend, or personal events, because that's just not good for your mental health. You're still a person, so you need to take that time out for yourself. Personally, having a little bit of an emergency fund that I can dip into anytime just in case is super important to me, just because I like that little bit of extra financial security. But the main thing that I do is I make sure that I try to plan my jobs around these big events. Like I said earlier, if I'm going on vacation sometime during the summer and I know I'm going to be gone for a week, I don't want to have to work around or try to miss a week of work or have to include that in my contract. So instead, I try to schedule my time before that ends up until that, and then I return to work right after that. And that typically helps me avoid missing too much work and avoids missing too much income, which leads me so nicely into challenge number 4. Challenge number 4, last minute contract changes and cancellations. Now, the fact that these jobs can cancel your contract or cancel your job at their discretion at any time is pretty common knowledge. If you're not hitting their productivity, if they hire someone to work full time, if they just don't need you anymore, they can just wipe it and be done with it at any time. Now, like I said in challenge 3, I try to plan like really big events or events that I'm gonna need extended time off for in between my jobs so I don't miss out on too much time and miss out on money. But again, if these jobs cancel your contract, if they shorten your extension for any reason, then you have to think about canceling your housing. You have to think about what job you're gonna take next. If I plan to be in one state for an extended amount of time, where am I gonna go next? But you also have to think about those plans that you might have made in between your contracts. But if your contract gets canceled, it might throw off that timing that you had planned so heavily. So you might have planned to be in one state for that 3 to 6 months, but if they cancel it, where are you gonna go next? Are you able to cancel your housing? Are you able to find new housing? Are you gonna go straight back into work? Are you gonna take time off? These are all things that you're gonna have to think about kind of out of nowhere. Now, being flexible is obviously part of being a travel physical therapist with as much movement as I do. And I'll just say, remember that you have to be flexible because, again, you never know when it's going to happen. One thing that I think is really important is when you're looking for your housing, if you're going to lease a property, be sure to ask about the process of possibly voiding that lease in case your contract does get canceled. Now, this only happened to me once. I signed an extension, and instead of a full 3-month, 13-week extension, they only needed me for 4 weeks. But luckily, the guy that I was renting from, he was very calm, very chill, man. He understood, he voided the contract, and allowed me to leave the city and go about my business and finding a new job. And again, everything worked out well. Everything worked out just fine afterwards, but I kind of had to jump into another job relatively quickly just to kind of still flow with the travel plans that I had planned for later in the year. So again, just keep that in the back of your mind and be ready to be flexible just in case your job ever does get canceled at the last minute. Challenge number 5, the emotional impact of a goodbye. Now, I'm a healthcare provider. The nature of my job is literally to help people. I want all my patients to get better, and I dedicate a lot of time to that within these 3 to 6 months that I'm working in these facilities. So naturally, after that amount of time, you're gonna grow attached to most, if not every single one of your patients, because again, I want all my patients to get better. I want all of them to get back to doing the things that they were doing before. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I actually don't think it's a bad thing at all, because again, I think it shows that you care. So again, in the end, it can be a little harder and a little bit more emotional saying goodbye to these people that you've grown to know over these last 3 to 6 months. So just be ready for that last day to be a little sadder than you might expect it to be. And that doesn't necessarily only apply to just your clinic work. If you spend 3 to 6 months anywhere, you're going to develop habits, you're going to develop routines, you're going to develop places that you like to go and like to visit during these times. And so when it's time to just up and go to another city in just a day or a few days, it can be a little jarring. It still is to me, and that's completely a normal thing. Again, flexibility is just a part of the job, but it's more than fine to crave a little bit of familiarity, and that's definitely something that I get when I'm in one place for 3 to 6 months at a time. Plus, moving around to these different cities and not really knowing anybody in these cities, especially if you're traveling by yourself, it can be a little lonely. Adventures and exploring new places and being in places that you've always wanted to live in is fun. It really is a great time. But again, there's nothing wrong with wanting or craving just a little bit of familiarity. When I'm out and about in these cities, I make sure that I stay in contact with my friends and my family. I'm talking to somebody that I know almost every day, if not every other day, or at least every week. But also I make sure that my hobbies travel with me so I'm not just kind of wasting my time. I work out, I run, I go to different restaurants in these cities, I go to different coffee shops, I do things in these cities that I like to do, and I kind of see how they're different in these different places. And I think just by being intentional and putting yourself out there at different places, at different local events in the community, you never know. You might make new friends, you might find a community, and you might not feel so lonely. Now, I didn't make this list to scare anybody away or just talk about all the negative cons of travel physical therapy. Again, it's a great career. I'm glad to make the jump. I would encourage anybody that has the time or the opportunity to do it, to travel, to at least try it for a little bit. I just wanted to share some of the unexpected challenges that I've faced and that I feel like only come about only when you've actually done the job for a little bit. If you're a travel therapist and you somehow found this video, first of all, thank you for watching. But tell me about a challenge that you might have faced in one of your contracts since you've been traveling. And if you're not a travel therapist and it's something that you think you might be interested in, feel free to subscribe. I talk about travel therapy on this channel, while also just talking about the things that I feel like are relevant to my life as a travel therapist. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.